People with low standards are just nuisances. Get lost. Linda looks down on me and says this in front of all the employees. She receives special treatment just because she's the director's daughter. This has made her arrogant, and she constantly harasses me, her mentor. However, I can't put up with this forever. The stress I've accumulated over time explodes, and my heart is filled with intense anger. I refuse to be pushed around by a selfish person any longer. I'm quitting on my terms. I decided to leave the company and said, "I'm leaving. Thank you for everything." Linda rejoices. Go ahead, go ahead. With the nuisance gone, it'll be paradise from now on. But in reality, it's not paradise, it's going to be a living hell for her. Moreover, she and I will end up facing off in an unbelievable way. My name is Sarah. I am a 50-year-old employee working in the sales department. I'm not particularly beautiful, and I graduated from Denver Community College, so my academic background isn't impressive. In fact, my grades were average during my student days, and it was my parents who pushed me to go to community college. The phrase ordinary person fits me perfectly. One thing that's a bit unusual about me is my hobby of participating in triathlons. A triathlon consists of swimming, cycling, and long-distance running in that order. The distances vary by event, but it's undeniably a race that requires a lot of stamina. The reason I put myself through such a tough challenge is for my health. Since entering the workforce, I hadn't been doing any significant exercise, and after turning 30, I started suffering from stiff shoulders, back pain, and overall fatigue. I realized that my body was in serious trouble and decided to start exercising. Since I was somewhat better at swimming and long-distance running than others during my school days, I became interested in triathlons. It's considered a lifelong sport, and I've heard that you can continue doing it as you get older if you don't overdo it. If I was going to take on a challenge, I wanted to do it for the long term, so I decided to give it a try. After training on my own and participating in a race, the sense of achievement when I crossed the finish line was incredible, and I was immediately hooked. I also noticed that my stamina improved, and my overall stiffness was alleviated, so I've continued it as a hobby within a reasonable scope. Having a hobby brings excitement to life, and it helps me be more efficient at work. However, life isn't always smooth sailing. Lately, I've been troubled by a difficult person, and I'm struggling with how to deal with it. That person is named Linda, and she's only 23 years old. She just graduated from college and joined the company this year. But from her very first self-introduction, her attitude was terrible. I graduated from a prestigious university, and I'm the most elite person here. Everyone must treat me accordingly. She blurted out this statement in front of many colleagues. Naturally, the room froze, and most employees thought a terrible problem child had joined. But her mom, Barbara, was different. "Linda, you did a great job introducing yourself." She praised her. Barbara is the director at this company and is my boss. She's related to the company president, so she's favored within the company, and no one can stand up to her. It would be fine if she had a gentle personality, but unfortunately, the opposite is true. She gets angry over the smallest things. "How can you not do such a simple task properly? What's wrong with you?" She would often yell at the underlings. She makes many mistakes at work, but no one openly opposes her because of her relationship with the president. However, behind her back, everyone dislikes her. Barbara used her influence to get her daughter hired at the company. It was puzzling how someone like Linda could pass the interview, but it made sense when I heard from HR that she was hired through Barbara's connections. I was opposed to such nepotism, thinking it was unfair to the employees who passed the entrance exams properly. Moreover, Linda would often say, I don't feel like working today. She regularly neglected her duties. Dealing with someone like her was exhausting, yet I was assigned to be her mentor. You have a reputation for being a good trainer, so take care of my daughter. And if you hurt her in any way, I won't forgive you. Barbara's threatening words left me no choice but to take care of Linda, but as expected, it has been challenging. Linda, could you make 5 copies of this document? I only asked this. What? I'm not a gopher. And she responded angrily. Of course, I wasn't making her do it out of spite. New employees have limited abilities and can only be entrusted with small tasks. In dramas or comics, new employees might suddenly get big tasks, but that doesn't happen in our company. Even these small tasks help someone. And all new employees start with such work. Even with this explanation, she seemed unsatisfied. I graduated from a prestigious university, so I'm different from other new employees. She insisted she was a capable worker, but academic study and actual work are different. In reality, she wasn't very competent at her job. When she copied documents, they were either drastically reduced or enlarged, making them hard to read, and she would shred documents that shouldn't be shredded. This happened because she didn't follow my instructions and acted on her own. In this state, she won't progress beyond menial tasks. Therefore, I only assigned her simple tasks, but Linda was very dissatisfied with this. I am much more capable. You must give me important tasks. She kept complaining loudly, which was quite troublesome. Why could she act like this? It's because she was appointed as assistant director immediately after joining the company. This position involves assisting Barbara, the director, and Linda sometimes accompanied Barbara to important clients. There was no such position as assistant director before. Linda is going to be a big deal in the future, so it's unfair to treat her like other new employees. She created the position just for Linda. With her influential mom treating her specially, Linda believed she was extraordinary. So, give me special tasks, she would demand, causing trouble. Barbara also had complaints about my training. Linda can handle more difficult tasks. It's insulting to make her do copies all the time. Barbara glared at me and took Linda to an important business meeting. Furthermore, Barbara acted as the assistant, while Linda took the lead in the discussions. It's too early for Linda to handle this. I opposed the idea, but she didn't listen to me. As expected, Linda caused a huge problem in the deal. When the client asked for a slight price reduction, just sign the contract already and follow orders. She lashed out angrily, offending the client. Eventually, Barbara managed to calm things down and seal the deal, but it was a close call. This deal was crucial and promised significant profit if successful, so failure was not an option. I regretted not stopping her from attending. As I was lamenting my decision, Barbara started blaming me. It's your fault for not properly training Linda. You worthless woman! What? I admitted I should have tried harder to stop her, but calling me worthless was too harsh. Seeing this, Linda joined Barbara in bad-mouthing me. Yeah, it's because of your poor training that I ended up saying such rude things. It's all your fault. You led me astray. Linda spewed accusations like a machine gun, but I never intended to ruin her. Wait. Barbara, calm down. I tried to de-escalate the heated Miller duo, but they ignored me. A mentor who ruins new employees. People like you are just troublemakers. Exactly. You're fired as my mentor. They continued to insult me and removed me from the mentoring role without a second thought. Barbara decided to take over Linda's training herself. At first, I thought being relieved of a troublesome task might be a positive change. However, Barbara came to despise me, barely assigning me any proper work. I ended up buried in menial tasks, commuting daily only to face harassment. Even with Barbara as her mentor, Linda kept making mistakes. Each time, "It's because you didn't train Linda properly that she failed," Barbara blamed me, causing my stress to mount. Linda, emboldened by Barbara, also blamed me. "It's your fault I messed up again. What are you going to do about it?" This constant harassment was overwhelming. Due to these relentless accusations, my stress levels kept rising. One day, our company organized a drinking party. It was a social event meant for all employees to interact across departments. I was looking forward to it as I had friends in other departments. Finally, the day of the party arrived. Unexpectedly, the tasks Barbara assigned took longer than expected, making me an hour late to the hotel banquet hall. With around 100 employees gathered, the venue was bustling. Just as I thought of getting a drink, "Hey!" a drunk Linda stumbled over to me. "Why are you even at this party? Get out! This is a company-wide event, right? I think I have the right to be here." Despite my explanation, she was visibly displeased. "Someone as low-level as you has no right to attend. Just disappear." The moment I heard those words, all the pent-up stress exploded, filling me with intense anger. I couldn't stand being treated as a troublemaker by someone so incapable and unmotivated. I was done being pushed around by such a selfish person. "I'm quitting. I've had enough," I thought to myself as I said. "I'm leaving. Thank you for everything," and made the decision to really leave the company. The higher-ups didn't show any signs of reprimanding Linda and pretended not to notice. When I had consulted with them several times about the Miller family, they just told me to handle it myself. My disappointment with the company grew rapidly, and I no longer had any attachment to it. Go ahead. Now that the nuisance is gone, it's paradise from here on out." Linda rejoiced, but in reality, she was headed for hell rather than paradise. Moreover, I would end up competing with her in an unbelievable way. However, Linda, convinced that she was headed for paradise. "Yay! Now it's my kingdom from here on out," shouted joyfully. Before I knew it, Barbara, who had come closer, was drunk with a lewd smile on her face. "Oh, Linda, you managed to drive out the nuisance yourself? Good for you. Seeing her praising Linda, I felt I couldn't take it anymore and left the venue without saying anything. However, before heading home, I decided to call an important client and discuss various matters. As a result, a big deal might be off the table, but I didn't feel much guilt. The next day, when I visited the company to hand over my duties, a panicked Barbara rushed towards me. "What are we going to do? Barbara's face was pale, indicating an emergency, but just saying "what are we going to do" didn't explain what had happened. "What happened? Please calm down and tell me." "Mom, you need to calm down." Linda, also unable to grasp the situation, tried to soothe Barbara. Barbara then exclaimed, "This is no time to be calm." But other employees intervened and managed to calm her down. "So, what happened?" I asked, and Barbara, trembling slightly, opened her mouth. Actually, the $3 million deal fell through." "Oh, that." I immediately understood what she was referring to. Although I was no longer entrusted with important work, I had been solely responsible for the $3 million deal. The other party had requested that I remain the point of contact because they trusted Sarah's personality. After the gathering, I called the client to inform them that I was leaving the company. I wanted to let them know the facts first so you wouldn't do anything reckless. They said that depending on the new person in charge, the deal might be off the table. Why didn't you tell us such an important thing? Barbara accused me with a look that suggested it was my fault, but I had reported everything properly. I called you after talking to the client, Barbara. You said, "Got it," didn't you? Although you were drunk, I also sent an email and informed you on WhatsApp. Wait a minute. Barbara frantically checked her mobile phone and completely froze. Oh, it's true. I missed it. Everyone makes mistakes, but to do it at such a critical moment. As it says in the email, I plan to discuss who the new person in charge would be today and get the client's approval. As I explained, Barbara's complexion worsened. I missed the report and, thinking I could take credit for your work, I called the client earlier. Then, as I expected something outrageous, she continued. Sarah had to leave due to unavoidable circumstances, so I said either Linda or I would take over. But then, they got angry and said, "Are you kidding me?" And the deal fell through. Why did you act on your own, of all people, you two taking over? They really hate you too. I felt like burying my head in my hands. Your behavior has been so bad that it naturally spread bad reputations about our company to various others. Linda, in particular, was terrible. Linda, who had been visiting various companies with Barbara, had been caught bad-mouthing the other companies in break rooms, arguing with their employees, and causing repeated trouble. Barbara, on her part, didn't reprimand Linda at all, which led to frequent complaints coming to our company. Barbara and Linda are clearly at fault. Maybe you want to blame me for not stopping you, but you two never listened to what I said, did you? That's... Seeing Barbara at a loss for words, I continued. The $3 million client also heard about your bad reputation and asked me if the rumors were true. They asked me not to lie, so I told them the truth. The Millers were speechless, just standing there. Their misconduct was known, and they had also jeopardized the $3 million deal. They probably thought it was over. Anyway, let's go apologize to the client. I said to take control of the situation and immediately called the client to tell them we would apologize. I urged the dazed Millers and headed to the client's office. After explaining the situation and apologizing multiple times, we managed to prevent the deal from being completely canceled. However, the client was very angry, and it was a close call. Our company has been growing rapidly in recent years, so even if the deal had fallen through, we would have been able to manage. But the crisis was averted, and we just needed to appoint a proper successor. As I returned to our company, thinking this, Linda suddenly started yelling. Now that I think about it, why did you tell the client about our bad behavior? If you had just said we were good people, this might not have happened. Telling a lie would have destroyed our trust with the client instantly. Besides, they said the deal would proceed as long as the Millers were not involved. They were willing to overlook rude employees because of the significant profit. Wait, I didn't hear about that. Now Barbara was complaining, but she was also mistaken. I reported it properly. I warned you not to get involved in this deal, didn't I? Do you not remember? It seemed she really didn't. Barbara froze with a face that said she had no idea. I told you in person, wrote a memo, and sent an email. When I told you in person, you said got it and seemed unusually understanding. But you were just tuning me out, weren't you? I couldn't help but feel exasperated. Barbara, embarrassed. No, well... She stammered and looked down. For heaven's sake. Why do you keep making mistakes one after another? I said in disbelief, and Barbara, thoroughly ashamed, turned red. After that, I assigned a reliable employee as my successor and went to greet the business partner. Fortunately, the business partner liked the new employee, and the $3 million deal proceeded smoothly. With this major handover completed, I also handed over detailed documents to my colleagues. After leaving the company, I took some time to rest and started job hunting. I thought that at my age it would be difficult to find a good job, but I found a place where I wanted to work. Fortunately, I was able to get hired there, and I was relieved. With my new job approaching, I was running outside, preparing for a triathlon that was 2 months away. However, as I entered a large park and was resting by the fountain. "Hey! You troublesome woman!" a loud voice shouted. Looking in the direction of the voice, I saw Linda running towards me. I thought it was unfortunate to run into someone unpleasant, but she started blaming me unilaterally. "It's your fault I got fired. How are you going to take responsibility?" "Fired?" I was genuinely surprised by this. "Thanks to you, Mom, you were protected in the company." "How did you get fired?" Other employees' complaints piled up. They all protested to the upper management at once, and they said they couldn't keep me anymore, so my family and I were fired. She angrily ranted as if she couldn't take it anymore. With that kind of work attitude, it's not surprising. I warned you many times, but you never improved. Although I ultimately distanced myself from her, while I was in the company, I tried various ways to handle Linda. I told you at least 100 times that you couldn't continue like this in the working world, and I even had individual talks with you. But you never tried to improve your attitude. It's only natural you got fired. That's because your training was bad. No one would want to listen to that. Seeing Linda still blaming me in such a situation, I began to get really angry. Linda! Stop blaming others and reflect on your own actions. When I sternly admonished her, she seemed frightened. Eek! And let out a pathetic sound. At that moment, Barbara came running towards us at full speed. Linda, what's wrong? I bought you a drink, so calm down. Isn't that troublesome woman? We came for a nice walk to refresh ourselves. Apparently, the mother and daughter both held a grudge against me. I couldn't deal with them anymore, and as I started to feel the curious gazes of onlookers. Well then, I'll be going, I said, and started running again. Hey! You! Stop! I heard Barbara's shouting voice, but I didn't pay attention. I left the park and returned to my training. 2 months later, I participated in a triathlon. This time, it was a 0.94-mile swim, 24.85-mile bike ride, and 6.21-mile run, totaling 32 miles. There are longer triathlons, so this could be considered short, but running more than 31.06 miles with your own strength is no easy task. You have to carefully manage your energy, or you'll run out midway, so you need to maintain your pace. Especially for the swim at the start, as it involves swimming in the ocean, there are waves. I thought about conserving as much energy as possible. As I was waiting at the starting point, thinking about these things, 2 people appeared from the side. Hello there. Hi. Sarah. It was Linda and Barbara. Judging by their outfits, it seemed they were also participating in this competition. We heard from our former colleagues that Sarah was doing triathlons. We're going to beat Sarah with the power of our family, Linda declared boldly, but winning a triathlon against me wouldn't help her get her job back. As I wondered what they were thinking, Barbara pointed at me. Just watch. We'll beat Sarah at anything and prove her wrong. The Miller duo didn't seem to care about logic. they just wanted to win against me for the sake of it. It was tempting to just concede and let them feel victorious to avoid the hassle. But no, there was no need to give in to such people. As I was thinking this, the starting gun fired. In a race like this, it's all about getting ahead first. That's right, Linda. The Miller pair shouted to each other as they enthusiastically plunged into the ocean. Starting off too fast would exhaust my energy, so I decided to go at my own pace. The swim segment ended smoothly, and I transitioned to the bike portion. At that moment, I spotted Barbara collapsed on the side of the course. "The sea, it's so hard, not like a pool," she muttered weakly. From her words, it seemed she had practiced in a pool but never swam in the ocean. Pools are calm, unlike the sea, and the waves had likely drained her energy more than she imagined. "Oh, wait for me." Barbara tried to follow me, but my body. She only managed to say that before giving up. I didn't have the luxury to worry about Barbara, so I got on my bike and started pedaling. By the time I reached the cycling finish line, I was quite fatigued but still had energy left. I felt confident I could handle the final running segment. At that moment, I couldn't help but wonder about Linda. She had gone ahead of me, and I hadn't seen her yet, so she might be steadily heading towards the finish line. Being younger, she likely had more stamina, and if she had trained seriously, she could possibly beat me. Losing to her would be infuriating, but sabotaging her was out of the question. I decided to focus on reaching the finish line myself, and as I ran, I saw Linda wandering at the side of the course. It seemed she had run out of energy. My legs, she muttered with a dazed expression. But upon seeing me, her spirit reignited. "I'm not losing to this troublemaker," she shouted and started to accelerate. However, she was running like it was a sprint, clearly not sustainable for the entire race. Linda wasn't considering that. She shouted, "Hey, old woman! See the power of youth!" and quickly passed me. In triathlons, maintaining your own pace is crucial, so I continued running steadily without increasing my speed. 5 minutes later, I found Linda collapsed again at the side. As I passed her, "I thought I had shaken you off," she said with a frustrated look and tried to sprint again, but after running about 100 meters, "My leg, it's cramped." She fell to her knees. Running recklessly had led to this. Race staff rushed to Linda, so she was probably okay to leave behind. "See you later," I said and hurried on. I kept running steadily and finally reached the finish line. No matter how many times I participate in a triathlon, the sense of accomplishment at the finish line is always amazing. After taking a short break, I picked up my belongings and was about to head home when I saw the Miller family approaching me, barely able to walk. "This triathlon is so much tougher than I thought it would be." Mom and I trained so hard, but still. They both looked like ghosts, completely drained of energy. "Well, it's a long-distance event where you have to keep moving, so it's naturally exhausting. Anyway, I guess this means I win. Please stop being so confrontational." With that, I tried to leave, but Linda was persistent. "We'll definitely win the next competition. Mom and I will both finish together." "What? You still want to compete?" I was exasperated, and Barbara looked equally annoyed. "This is too exhausting. If we do it again, Linda, you can do it alone. Besides, we need to find jobs." "What? Mom, are you abandoning me? You should find a job for me." Linda continued to argue loudly, but Barbara wasn't backing down. "Linda, you're an adult now. Find your own job. I already helped you with nepotism at the last company. Enough is enough." What? Parents are supposed to take care of their kids. You always said a good education would guarantee a stable life, but that was a lie, wasn't it? You owe me for lying to me. Linda's rapid-fire rebuttal made the situation feel like it would spiral into a huge argument. I was getting fed up with talking to this family, and my anger was boiling over. Enough already! Before I knew it, I was yelling. If you had been working seriously, you wouldn't be in this mess. You need to understand that the root cause is yourselves. But Linda tried to make excuses, but I cut her off. No buts. I silenced her. I've said it many times, but you two always blame others and never make an effort. All you do is act superior. Did you really think you'd succeed with that attitude? I had never been this angry before, and the Miller family was frozen in shock. But I continued. Until you change your attitude, no one will help you, and your life won't improve. Do you understand? Speaking in a very low voice with a suspicious expression, it seemed I had scared the Millers. Wait, am I the bad one here? Oh. I think we might have upset her. Linda and Barbara's voices trembled, but my anger wasn't going away. Say you're sorry. Apologize sincerely. Yes, we're very sorry. Yes, we're very sorry. They apologized in unison and then dragged their heavy bodies away. I had a feeling they wouldn't bother me again. Finally, I felt the tension release from my shoulders and experienced the sense of accomplishment from finishing the race. What happened to the Millers afterward, I don't know. Apparently, their selfishness made it hard for them to find new jobs, leading to a life of poverty. They blamed each other for their misfortune, eventually cutting ties completely. It seemed like a fitting end for them. Meanwhile, I was working at a new job. There were no weird people like the Millers, so I was happy to work in peace. I continued my hobby of participating in triathlons, and I recently set a personal best at a competition. Thankfully, I was in good health and planned to keep going as long as it was reasonable. I knew life would still present challenges, but instead of trying to knock others down, I wanted to focus on rising higher myself. With that in mind, I devoted myself to my hobbies and work each day. Hey, why don't we sleep together in the same bed tonight? Huh? Yeah, sure. Wait a minute. What is it this time? When you say sleep together, do you mean bringing Allison's bedding into our bedroom? That would be a hassle to clean up. Why doesn't she just sleep in my bed? In the same bed as you? It's fine. My bed is big enough. It's not about the size of the bed. Are you going to complain like you did about the shower? Allison, do you not want to sleep with me? Huh? No, I don't mind. See? She says it's fine. My husband Stephen and daughter Allison are unusually close. Stephen has been divorced before and raised Allison on his own, so she probably trusts him a lot. But I think it's weird for a father and daughter to shower together and sleep in the same bed. Stephen and I have only just gotten married and started living together. So it's hard for me to suddenly criticize their habits. They might feel like I'm rejecting their way of doing things and get upset. I was left worrying about this for days on end. 2 years after we got married, Allison started middle school, but she and Stephen were still showering and sleeping together like always. I had thought about saying something to them, but then something happened that made me hesitate. About a month after Allison started middle school, they had a health check at school. I got called in by Allison's teacher to discuss the results. Normally, if there was a problem with the health check, they'd tell you to go to the hospital. I felt a deep sense of unease about being called in by the teacher. As I mentioned before, it's about the hearing test, the teacher began. Does Allison have some kind of illness? I asked, worried. I think Allison possibly has Dash. I was shocked by what the teacher told me. Now that I knew the cause of the issues in our household, I resolved to tackle them head on. I'm Lisa, a 35-year-old office worker. My husband Stephen is a salesman, and our daughter Allison just graduated elementary school and is on spring break right now. We're a completely ordinary family, about to reach the big milestone of Allison starting middle school. The only thing that sets us apart from other families is that Stephen has been divorced before, and Allison is his stepchild. But in this day and age when 1 in 3 couples gets divorced, that's hardly unusual. Stephen and I met 3 years ago at a dinner party. It was one of those events where people gathered to have drinks, and everyone was allowed to freely invite their friends. With 15 participants, it was a large group, and there were friends of friends mixed in, so about half of them were people I was meeting for the first time. Stephen was among those new acquaintances. Excuse me, is it okay if I sit here? I arrived late and this is the only seat available. Oh, not at all, please go ahead. Stephen sat down next to me with an apologetic expression on his face and called the waiter over to order a beer. My first impression of Stephen was that he was the serious type. It was partly because he was wearing a suit, but more than that, it was the impression I got from our initial conversation. Were you late because of work? No, I actually finished work early, but I went home first to help my daughter with her homework. She's 10 years old and has been struggling with math lately, so checking her homework has become a daily routine. Wow, that's impressive. I bet your wife appreciates that. Actually, I'm divorced. Oh, I'm so sorry. No, it's not a big deal at all, he reassured me. Is your daughter home alone today? She lives with my parents, so they're taking care of her today. I got permission from Allison after checking her homework before coming out. As we were talking, the beer Stephen ordered was served. Some time had passed since the dinner party started, and groups had formed around us to chat. Stephen and I quietly clinked our glasses together, just the two of us. After that, he continued to brag about his daughter, talking about how straightforward and good-natured she was, and how she was a hard worker who put effort into her studies. Stephen seemed to cherish Allison immensely, and his life revolved entirely around her. I think Stephen was going through a busy period at work at the time. Even so, I was drawn to his kindness in prioritizing Allison. We exchanged contact information and started seeing each other even after the dinner party, and our relationship began. Once we started dating, given our age, we quickly began to think about marriage. However, for us to get married, building a relationship between Allison and me was a major prerequisite, requiring careful judgment and timing. In addition, Stephen had one more concern about Allison. I think it'll be fine, but be careful not to try to get too close too quickly. I know. You had issues with your ex-wife. Yeah. My ex-wife seemed to have developed postpartum depression and couldn't feel affection for Allison anymore. She started being cold to Allison. Allison might be sensitive to adult women or the existence of a mom. We'll have to actually meet and see how she reacts though. Don't worry. I'll be mindful of keeping an appropriate distance. When I met Allison for the first time, Stephen stoked my anxiety to no end. He put so much pressure on me that on the way to his parents' home to pick up Allison, I felt like my chest would explode from nervousness. But I suppose that was because Stephen cared about Allison that much. I placed my hand on my nearly bursting chest, took a deep breath, and somehow managed to calm myself down. Lisa, over here. Oh, wait a second. Hey now, don't go running off suddenly, it's dangerous. My anxiety had disappeared an hour after meeting Allison. When we arrived at the shopping mall, Allison took my hand and hurried towards the knick-knack store she had her eye on. Stephen following behind and cautioning Allison looked like a family scene no matter how you looked at it. In the car, she happily talked about school and her life at home with Stephen. Allison and I sat in the back seat while Stephen drove, but Allison talked about absolutely everything, so when I glanced at Stephen's face in the rearview mirror, he looked a little embarrassed. Also, as I had imagined even before meeting Allison, she and Stephen were very close. "Dad, let me have some of that." "Again? I'm going to run out of mine." "Come on. I like that flavor too. Just give me one bite." Allison stole the ice cream Stephen was eating and, despite saying she'd only have one bite, she took 3 before returning it to him. The expression on her face at that moment was one of delight. When I was in elementary school, I disliked my dad for no reason. I apologize to all the dads out there, but I believe it's a daughter's destiny to dislike her dad. However, there are exceptions, and some daughters don't hate their dads. Allison seems to be one of them. Everyone around me irrationally disliked their dads, so Stephen and Allison's relationship appeared very refreshing to me. Seeing their bond allowed me to erase one of the many preconceptions I held. Since Stephen and Allison's relationship was good to begin with, and I was able to quickly build a relationship with Allison, we got married a year after we started dating. After the wedding, we rented an apartment and our life as a family of 3 began. As my first impression suggested, Stephen was serious and worked hard at his job. Allison was also an obedient and good kid. At this point, I thought we would continue to have a happy family life forever. However, this happiness was only superficial and would gradually crumble. When I started living with Stephen and Allison after getting married, I was surprised by something. "Allison, want to take a shower?" "Yeah." "What?" While I was cleaning up the dishes after dinner, I heard an unbelievable conversation coming from the living room, so I quickly turned around to check on Stephen and Allison. The 2 of them were just getting up from the couch. It seems I didn't mishear. They were about to go take a shower together. Wait. When you say you're going to take a shower, you mean together?" "Yeah, we always do on holidays or when I get home from work early, right?" "Huh? Yeah, that's right. Allison is 11 years old, you know? Just look at Allison. She's still in elementary school. And she's the one saying she wants to go in together. Is there a problem?" "Well, you are parent and child, and she's only 11, and she doesn't seem to mind." "See, there's no problem, right? Let's go, Allison." I couldn't say with confidence that it was wrong for Stephen and Allison to shower together. The 2 of them seemed to get along very well, and it appeared they had always done this. Was it my place to put a stop to it when I had just started living with them? They might feel bad, thinking I was denying their habit. Plus, I knew some kids who continued bathing with their parents even as they got older. Still conflicted, I went back to cleaning up. When the 2 came out of the shower, they sat together on the couch and happily started watching TV. They really do get along well. Watching them from the kitchen next to the living room, I figured that since Allison was already 11, she would probably start disliking showering with Stephen soon enough, so I decided it was fine not to say anything until then. With that, my worries about the shower were gone, but Stephen quickly created a new concern. "Want to sleep together tonight?" "Yeah. Sure." Wait. I reflexively interrupted their conversation from where I was watching them at a distance. "What is it this time?" "When you say sleep together, do you mean bringing her bedding into our bedroom?" "That would be a pain to put back. She can just sleep in my bed." "In the same bed?" It's fine. Allison is small, so there's plenty of space in one bed. I'm not talking about the size of the bed. Are you going to object to this too, like with the shower? Allison, do you not want to sleep with me? Huh? No, I don't mind. See, Allison says it's fine. Stephen headed to the bedroom with Allison like it was the most natural thing. When I went to the bedroom a bit later, the two of them were sleeping in the same bed. Seeing them sleeping peacefully, the worries I had decided not to mind about the shower started to resurface. I knew Stephen and Allison were very close since before I married him. Stephen cherishes Allison, and Allison probably relies on Stephen since she hasn't had a mom until now. But I never imagined they were close enough to shower and sleep together. I got into bed alone, torn about whether I should resolve this issue, and it took me longer than usual to fall asleep. The next day, I decided I should first confirm whether Allison really didn't mind showering and sleeping with Stephen. Allison, were you happy showering with Dad yesterday? Huh? Yeah. You always go in together on Dad's days off and when he gets home early, right? He said he'll be late today, so you can't go in together. Are you disappointed? I don't know. Do your friends at school also shower with their dads? Or is it just you, Allison? I don't know about my friends. You don't dislike showering with Dad? Why are you asking that? Am I doing something bad? I seem to have messed up the sense of distance in my haste. Because I asked too many questions, Allison, who was doing homework at the living room table, put away her study materials and went to her room looking sad. Stephen would be coming home late today, so Allison and I would have to eat dinner with just the two of us. At dinner time, I couldn't bring myself to talk to Allison due to the earlier awkwardness, and we finished our meal without conversing. The silent dinner table was quiet, with only the sound of dishes clinking. I turned up the TV volume just a little, to make the sound of the dishes less noticeable. Allison finished her dinner and returned to her room without a word. As I was cleaning up the dishes, feeling regretful, I heard the sound of the front door opening, indicating Stephen had come home. I quickly brought up my concerns about Allison to Stephen as he entered the living room. Maybe she strongly felt that you were trying to be her mom when you asked her all those questions. She probably doesn't have a good impression of the word mom. That's why I told you to be careful about how close you get to Allison before we got married. I was being careful before, but after getting married and living together, I may have gotten a bit carried away. I had subconsciously tried to suddenly become a mom to her. My chest tightened as I realized Stephen was right. It would probably backfire if you try to get too close to Allison right now. I'll handle it, so you just lay low for a while. Okay, I understand. I had no choice but to follow Stephen's advice. Stephen headed to Allison's room to talk to her. Unable to do anything, I could only sit in the living room and pray that my relationship with Allison would be repaired soon. After about 30 minutes, I heard the sound of Allison's bedroom door opening. Thinking Stephen was coming back, I looked towards the living room door. However, Stephen's footsteps didn't head towards the living room but instead went in the direction of the shower. Moreover, I could hear Allison's voice as well. Allison had already taken a shower, but it seemed she was going to shower with Stephen again. I was sure they were having various conversations in the shower too. After a while, the two of them came out of the shower. Allison went to her room, and finally, Stephen returned to the living room. Eager to hear what happened, I immediately asked Stephen about his interaction with Allison as soon as I saw him. How did it go? Just as I thought, it was a mistake for you to suddenly act like her mom. I see. Of course. Don't get so down about it. She said things will go back to normal soon. I'll keep talking to Allison too. Please do. It seems like it would backfire if I try to talk to her too much. I silently thanked Stephen for his kindness. However, Stephen's next words once again made me question the situation. And you know, starting today, when I sleep with Allison, I'm going to go to her room instead of having her come to our bedroom. Huh? Why is that? Isn't it obvious? You think Allison wants to sleep in the same room as you when she's trying to distance herself from you? Oh, I guess you're right. Stephen's words about Allison wanting to keep her distance from me pierced my heart, causing intense pain. Stephen and Allison sleeping together, just the two of them. I didn't want to agree to it, but if I objected now, I would become the villain in this house, so I had no choice but to go along with Stephen in this situation. I silently nodded in agreement. Some time had passed since a wall had formed between Allison and me. Mom, listen. When you open this tube, it makes a big, pleasant sound. Can you show me what's inside, and not the tube itself? Allison had graduated from elementary school. The Allison who was an elementary school student until this morning was no longer one when she returned home. When the break ends, she will be a middle school student. Thanks to Stephen talking things through with Allison, my relationship with her had been repaired, and the problem was resolved. I was truly grateful to Stephen. However, my concerns remained the same even now. We're going to shower together today, right? Huh? Yeah. Wait a minute, Allison is about to be a middle school student, you know? It's about time you two stop showering and sleeping together. That's not true, right? You'll keep showering with me a bit longer, won't you? Stephen looked at Allison's face for confirmation, and she quietly nodded. After confirming Allison's agreement, Stephen turned to me with a proud expression on his face. See? She says it's fine, so it's okay, right? But you know how close Allison and I are, don't you? We're not like most parents and children out there. Stephen happily made plans to shower with Allison that evening, smiling gleefully. At this rate, he probably wouldn't stop sleeping in Allison's room with her either. Now that Allison was becoming a middle school student, I really didn't want her and Stephen to keep showering or sleeping together. However, according to Stephen, in order to repair my relationship with Allison, it was crucial for him to shower and sleep with her, closing the emotional distance between them as parent and child while talking things out. He also said he wanted to continue doing so as much as possible to understand Allison's feelings going forward. When he put it that way, I had no choice but to back down, as I couldn't say anything after he had helped mend my relationship with Allison. Still, although I had let it slide until now, I was starting to feel that this wasn't right. Allison, I'm going to sleep in your room tonight, okay? Huh? Okay. Allison replied, her expression not looking particularly happy. She was clearly confused. However, despite her confusion, she followed Stephen's words. I found it strange, but if I asked Allison about it now, it might make things awkward again. I was afraid of Allison giving me the cold shoulder again, especially after we had just repaired our relationship. So even though I was concerned about Allison, I couldn't bring myself to ask her about it. A few days after Allison started her break, a small incident occurred. I don't want any more. What's wrong? My stomach hurts a bit. Stephen was coming home late today, so Allison and I were having dinner together. However, Allison finished her meal after only about 3 bites. You left about half yesterday too. Are you okay? I'm fine. I think I'll feel better after I sleep. If you don't have an appetite, should I make you some soup? We have bananas and apples, or I could go buy some yogurt. I don't need any. I'm going to sleep. I think it's better if you eat at least a little something. How about we go to the hospital tomorrow? I told you I'll be fine after I sleep. But your middle school entrance ceremony is coming up soon. I think it's better to get checked just in case. I said it's fine. Leave me alone. Allison slammed the table hard and stood up with the momentum. She walked a bit unsteadily to her room. Did I misjudge the distance between us again? Being yelled at by Allison made me lose my appetite as well. I didn't feel like moving, so I just sat there in a daze for a while, staring at my and Allison's mostly unfinished meals. Then, I heard the sound of the front door opening. Stephen was home. I immediately consulted Stephen about Allison when he entered the living room. Did you screw up again? It seems so. But this time, all I did was worry about Allison's health. Don't get too down. I'll go talk to her for you again. I'm sorry. Please do. If I left it to Stephen, he'd probably repair my relationship with Allison. However, that also meant it would become even harder for me to stop Stephen and Allison from showering and sleeping together. Still, right now, I had no choice but to ask Stephen. I decided to rely on Stephen again this time. Stephen promptly headed to Allison's room, and today too, Stephen and Allison slept in the same room. The next day. Good morning. Mom, I'm sorry about yesterday. I'm the one who should apologize. Now, let's have some breakfast. As I thought, if I left it to Stephen, the problem got solved quickly. Although there was still a bit of awkwardness remaining, the issue was resolved in just one night. Stephen entered the living room a bit late. Once again, he gave me a proud look. I started to lose confidence as a mom, wondering if this was what the relationship between a parent and child connected by blood was like. I'm home. Welcome back. How was school? Did you make any new friends? Everyone's the same from elementary school, so nothing's changed even though we're in middle school now. That makes sense. Well, how about your teacher? My teacher is young and cute, like a big sister. Isn't it rude to call your teacher that? Everyone's saying it. They say she's really easy to talk to, like a neighborhood big sister. When the break ended, Allison became a middle school student. It's only been a few days since she started middle school, but so far, there doesn't seem to be any problems at school. The problems just keep piling up at home. Stephen and Allison showering and sleeping together. Me not being able to stop it. Allison's concerning expression when Stephen talks to her, and me not being able to confirm the reason for it. Me not being able to act like a mom and relying on Stephen whenever something happens. I had completely lost confidence and was half giving up on resolving these issues. However, when it became clear that the root of all these problems was just one thing, I found myself galvanized to tackle them head-on. About a month after Allison started middle school, the students underwent health checks. Apparently, Allison had an issue with her hearing test. It's not uncommon for problems to be found during school health checks, and most of the time, they do a re-examination at the hospital and are told there are no major issues. Allison also had a problem with her urine test when she was in elementary school, but she went to the hospital and came back saying there was no problem. I thought this hearing test would turn out the same way, but it seems Allison had a problem with her hearing test. They want her to get checked at the hospital? Yeah, the hospital too, but the teacher said she wants to talk to us, so she asked us to come to the school. What does that mean? Did something happen right after she started school? Or did they actually find out she has a serious illness? If I had to guess, it's more likely Shaw has an illness. The teacher called me and told me to come. You don't think it could be a female-specific disease, do you? Didn't you ask on the phone? I did, but they said they'd give me the details at the school and wouldn't tell me. Well, if we're being called in, we have no choice but to go. You're right. We won't know anything until we hear what they have to say. My chest felt like it was about to explode, filled with anxiety from our inconclusive discussion. I couldn't sleep that night, my mind filled with unpleasant imaginings of Allison having a serious illness. The next day, I headed to the school to talk with the teacher. After school, I could hear the energetic voices of children putting their all into their club activities. I made my way through the lively sounds to the classroom where Allison spends her days. When I entered the classroom, the teacher was sitting alone in a chair. "Thank you for taking the time to come. Please have a seat," the teacher said, guiding me to a chair. I had seen her at the entrance ceremony. But looking at her up close, I could see that Allison was right, she was young and cute. She was probably in her late 20s, or maybe even mid-20s. I could see why the students were fond of her and called her a neighborhood big sister. However, as we began to talk, her gaze shifted from that of a young woman to a teacher. As I mentioned in my message, it's about the hearing test. Does Allison have some kind of serious illness? I think Allison possibly has Dash. I was shocked by what the teacher told me. Now that I knew the cause of the various problems we'd been dealing with at home, I was determined to solve them in one fell swoop. That night, Allison and I waited together for Stephen to come home from work. I'm sure Allison is scared to talk to Stephen, but I hope she can endure it just this once. As I waited, watching Allison struggle with her fear, I heard the sound of the front door opening. Stephen was home. "I'm back. What's going on? You both look frightened." Noticing the unusual atmosphere between Allison and me, Stephen stopped in his tracks as he entered the living room. He seemed on guard, but that didn't matter. I had already made up my mind to break down the wall he had built with his wariness. "You've been taking advantage of Allison's feelings and making her do whatever you want, haven't you?" "Huh? What are you talking about?" "Allison told me everything." "I told you not to say anything." Stephen's eyes turned sharp. He was clearly threatening Allison. It seemed his true colors were showing. Glared at by Stephen, Allison shrank back and began to tremble. Allison didn't seem able to say anything, so I decided to speak for her. "I went to the school today and heard about the health checkup. They said Allison might have psychogenic hearing loss. Well, we won't know for sure until she sees a doctor." "Psychogenic hearing loss? You mean she's going deaf?" "It doesn't seem to be that serious. Just some difficulty hearing. Apparently, some people don't even notice their hearing has gotten worse. Other symptoms can include loss of appetite, stomach pain, and unsteadiness." "Isn't that for a doctor to determine? Why were you called to the school?" "This illness is said to be caused by psychological stress. For Allison, that psychological stress is you." Since I had already said Allison told me everything, Stephen couldn't speak carelessly and seemed to be choosing his words carefully. I said everything, but he doesn't know how much of the situation I've grasped. However, he seems to be choosing his words too carefully, and no further words are coming from Stephen. But when I say everything, I really mean everything, so no matter how carefully Stephen chooses his words, it doesn't matter to me. I heard from the teacher and learned that the cause of all the problems piling up in our house was Stephen. As I mentioned in my message, it's about the hearing test. Does Allison have some kind of serious illness? I think Allison possibly has psychogenic hearing loss. It's a condition where hearing becomes a bit difficult, and some people don't even notice it's happening. Then why was I called to the school? This illness is said to be caused by psychological stress. It can happen to children going through puberty or those who have just started a new school and are dealing with a change in environment. That's why I thought Allison, having just become a middle school student, might be feeling some stress and decided to talk to her. Did Allison tell you about it? She was reluctant to talk at first, but I convinced her to tell me. I silently apologized to the teacher in my heart. Because she was young, my first impression was that she seemed unreliable. However, it seems the teacher managed to get Allison to open up about her troubles. I was able to reduce my preconceptions by one more. Allison had said the teacher was young and easy to talk to, but she probably also knows how to listen to students' concerns as a teacher. I couldn't help but think that the reason Allison and the others find her approachable is because she intentionally gets the students to talk about themselves. Is it true that Allison sleeps together with her dad? Yes, it's true. The teacher didn't mention the showers. Allison probably found it too embarrassing to talk about. Allison says she reluctantly sleeps with her dad. But Allison says she doesn't mind sleeping with Steven. Allison can't go against her dad. I'm sorry to ask, but Allison is a child from his previous marriage, right? And I heard Allison's mom suffered from postpartum depression? Yes, that's right. I heard about that from my husband too. It seems that Allison has been traumatized by her previous mom's coldness and her parents' divorce. From a young age, she's felt anxious that she might be abandoned by her parents someday. So she started doing whatever her dad said in order to avoid being abandoned. Abandon? We would never. Allison is in middle school now, so I think she understands she won't be easily abandoned. But the experiences of doing whatever her dad said from a young age to avoid being abandoned may have become so ingrained that she can't break free. So that's why she made that face when my husband talked to her, unable to refuse even though she wanted to. And the reason she yelled at me was because she was troubled and didn't know what to do. This is just my own theory based on what I heard from Allison. I think you understand Allison better than I do, so please try talking to her once. I returned home, reflecting on how I had failed to understand Allison at all. Hearing the teacher's story, various things started to connect in my head, and I began to see the true nature of the problem. Upon getting home, I first apologized to Allison for not understanding her at all and promised I would absolutely never abandon her no matter what. Allison forgave me, and when I told her I had spoken with the teacher, she told me everything. Listening to Allison's story, I checked the answers to what I had been thinking on the way home from school. Most of what I had thought was correct. So you were the cause of Allison's psychological stress. You noticed how she acted to avoid being disliked since she was little and took advantage of those feelings to make her do your bidding. It had already started when I first met Allison, hadn't it? When you first met Allison? I don't remember something that long ago. For you, ordering Allison around was so commonplace that you don't even remember it. Both Allison and I clearly recall it though. I was so happy when Allison warmed up to me right away when we first met. But apparently, you had told her to hold my hand, hug me and stuff to make a good impression on me. You even made her pretend to get along with you, didn't you? Now that you mention it, I do feel like I made her do something like that. At home, you showered together, slept together. I can't believe you would treat Allison however you pleased, knowing she couldn't defy you. That's just that. It's not like I abused her or anything. No, showering and sleeping together is clearly abuse. That's not true. Allison didn't seem to mind. Right, Allison? Steven shot Allison another sharp look. I felt like I had seen this exchange several times before. When Steven would shower or sleep with Allison, he would sometimes phrase it like he was checking with her. However, this wasn't a real check, but rather a pressuring command. Glared at by Stephen, Allison began trembling again. At this rate, Allison might give in to Stephen again, so I decided to assist a little. I lightly tapped Allison's shoulder, encouraging her to look at my face. Our eyes met, and I conveyed with my gaze that no matter what, I was on Allison's side. My message seemed to get through, and Allison's shaking subsided. I hated showering and sleeping with Dad. I don't want to be with Dad anymore. You say things like that? To Stephen, Allison had been the ultimate yes man since she was little. He seemed surprised that Allison had said no for the first time. Stephen, who thought she would easily give in again if pressured, looked perplexed. However, Stephen's perplexed expression lasted only a moment before his villainous face returned. I see. My bad. So? Should I stop giving orders to Allison then? You think that would solve anything? I'm divorcing you. And I'm taking custody of Allison. What? Divorce? Of course. You think I could entrust precious Allison to an abuser like you? You say abuse, but I just learned for the first time that Allison hated it. If she had told me from the start, I would have stopped right away. Isn't it partly Allison's fault for not clearly saying no? Stephen laughed, claiming his actions weren't abuse. However, such excuses were unacceptable. Surely someone had warned me he might try to make excuses like this, so I was already prepared. You know, sexual abuse of a child can be established even without sexual violence. What? When I haven't abused her? Don't be ridiculous. What you did falls under custodial indecency. When a custodian takes advantage of their influence to perform sexual acts on a child, it's a crime even with consent. That makes sense, doesn't it? A child is still mentally immature, and depending on the situation and environment, they can't always freely make decisions. This time, you exploited your position as Allison's dad and her desire to not be disliked by you to coerce her into showering and sleeping with you. Wouldn't that be considered custodial indecency? No, but I checked with Allison to see if she hated it. Even if Allison said it was fine, the moment you showered together, you were in the wrong. No way. But I've heard the police and child services don't really act on these things. That's understandable. It'd be a huge hassle if they responded to every report. It'd be pointless even if you reported it. Wouldn't it be more realistic for us to discuss and resolve this ourselves? Stephen had been laughing earlier, but now he was visibly flustered. He was trying to appear calm, but his words had already shifted to the defensive. However, it was too late to get defensive now. I had resolved to settle this in one blow, so I intended to put an end to everything with today's confrontation. It's true that an individual report might get buried among others. Right? So discussing it would be better for both of us and lead to a smoother resolution. Too bad, but the teacher has agreed to cooperate. The school will contact child services. And child services might contact the police. With the school and child services involved, the chances of the police taking action might increase a bit. Well, it'd be a problem if the police got involved. Then will you agree to the divorce? If so, I won't say anything to child services or the police. How about that? Fine. Worried Stephen might change his mind, I immediately obtained and printed the divorce papers online and had him sign them. After filling out the divorce papers, I didn't want him around Allison anymore, so I kicked him out of the house. With this, Allison would no longer have to shower or sleep with Stephen. Later, Stephen and I divorced, and I got custody of Allison. Normally, I think it would have been difficult for me to get custody of Allison given the circumstances. However, since it was determined that Stephen forcing Allison to shower and sleep with him constituted abuse, he was arrested, allowing me to take her. I heard Stephen complain to me, saying, "This wasn't our deal." But I hadn't broken my promise with Stephen. The reason Stephen ended up getting arrested was because Allison consulted the teacher, the school contacted child services, and child services provided the information to the police. I hadn't done anything. Since it was Allison and the teacher who acted, I don't think it counts as me breaking a promise. However, while Stephen was arrested, he wasn't indicted. At first I was disappointed, but having an arrest record was significant. And the nature of the arrest was sexual abuse of his own child. There was no way he could avoid harsh judgment from society with that kind of label. Stephen's massive loss of credibility made it impossible for him to keep working. So while he wasn't fired, he quickly quit the company himself. Also, given the reason for the divorce, all his relatives cut ties with him. As a result, Stephen was isolated with no one to rely on. After quitting his job, Stephen moved far away, seeking an environment where no one knew him. I don't know what kind of work he's doing, but it seems he is employed. He has to pay child support, so I hope he keeps working hard. I continue to live with Allison. Allison seems brighter than before. Her smiles until now were probably just for show, to avoid being disliked by Stephen and me. I think I had many shortcomings through all of this. So to ensure Allison never has to force a smile again, I'm determined to become a much more reliable mom.